She said, ask your father, even when I was burning with fever and I didn't even know his name. My name is Anna, and for most of my childhood I thought love came with receipts. When I was 7, I had strep throat so bad I couldn't swallow water. My temperature climbed past 103 degrees Fahrenheit, my breath came in short, painful gasps, and my throat felt like it had knives in it. I lay curled on the living room couch, sweat soaking through my t-shirt, whispering, Mom, please. I need a doctor. She didn't look up from her mirror. She was doing her eyeliner, perfectly sharp wings before a date with a man named Rick, or maybe Ron. I lost track after the third boyfriend that year. She tapped her mascara wand and said flatly, ask your father. I didn't know who he was. She'd never said his name, not once. All I had was a single black and white photo shoved in the back of a drawer, a man in military uniform, holding a newborn. The baby was me. Which one? I asked once when I was 6 and she'd used that line again. Which one is my father? She slapped the table so hard the salt shaker jumped. Don't get smart with me. If he gave a damn, he'd be here. That was the rule in our house. If you wanted anything, medicine, school shoes, a birthday cake, you were supposed to ask your father. And if you didn't know how, that was your problem. Her name was Naomi. My mother. Tall, beautiful, commanding in a way that made rooms fall silent when she entered. People loved her. Men adored her. Teachers smiled nervously when she picked me up late from school, dripping in perfume and power. But at home? At home she was cold. Not cruel, not violent, at least not in the obvious ways. Just absent. Impatient. She saw me as an inconvenience. A tether to a past she never wanted to discuss. She brought men home like stray cats. Some stayed for weeks, some just for the night. They used my shampoo, sat in my chair, watched my cartoons, and told me to go play in my room. Once I found a man named Vince going through my backpack, laughing at the spelling words I'd gotten wrong. He held one up and said, "This your brain on public school?" Naomi laughed. Don't be mean. She's sensitive. Vince looked me dead in the eye and said, You gonna cry about it? I was 8. That night, I slept in the hallway because Vince's boots were on my bed, and Naomi said she was too tired to deal with another meltdown. That was her word for anything I felt. A stomach ache? A meltdown. Being afraid to walk home alone when her boyfriend's friends lingered outside? Drama. Crying after a nightmare? Attention-seeking. There was one time, maybe the worst, when I'd gotten my period early at 10 years old. I was terrified, bleeding through my jeans during a field trip. When the school nurse called Naomi, she didn't answer. When she finally showed up 2 hours late, she tossed a grocery bag at me in the car. Figure it out, she muttered. You're a woman now. Act like it. Inside the bag were cheap pads and a bottle of ibuprofen. No explanation. No comfort. Just shame. And then there were the boyfriends. One summer, there was a man named Craig who stayed for months. He had a neck tattoo and a habit of accidentally walking into the bathroom while I was in it. Naomi said I was imagining things. Don't flatter yourself, she snapped. Craig's a grown man. You're a kid. When I refused to be alone in the house with him, she rolled her eyes and called me a brat. You're just jealous, she hissed one night. Because someone actually wants to spend time with me. I learned to lock my bedroom door. I learned to sleep with headphones in, even if they were dead and playing nothing, just to muffle the sounds. I learned not to ask for anything because everything came with a price. Even meals. If I wanted second helpings, I had to do something in return, clean the kitchen, lie to her boss about why she was late, write thank you notes to boyfriends I hated. Once I got bronchitis. Couldn't breathe, could barely talk. She gave me half a bottle of expired cough syrup and said, I'll take you to urgent care if it gets worse. It did. I ended up collapsing at school. The nurse called CPS when she found out no one had taken me to the doctor in a week. Naomi? She showed up with her makeup perfect, crying fake tears and telling them I had a history of exaggeration. I watched her win over the caseworker like she was auditioning for a movie. They dropped the case. I stopped talking after that. Stopped telling anyone what went on at home. No one believed me. Naomi always looked so put together, so devoted when she wanted to. But the truth was this, I was invisible unless I was a problem. And even then, the problem was always me. The first time she hit me, it was for looking at her boyfriend wrong. I was 11 and his name was Darren. He was loud, tattooed, smelled like smoke and cheap cologne. He wore sunglasses indoors and called me kid like it was an insult. He moved into our apartment the same week I got my first A in science. Naomi didn't even ask. One day there was one toothbrush in the bathroom and the next there were 2. Then his shoes by the door. then a duffel bag under the sink where my art supplies used to go. Darren took up space like it was owed to him. He drank beer from the can and left them stacked on the kitchen table like trophies. He'd turn up the TV so loud it shook the walls, then yell at me for closing my door. "You got something to hide in there, Anna?" Naomi just laughed. "She's shy. She gets that from her father." That night, I asked again for maybe the 10th time in my life. Who was he? My dad. She was lighting a cigarette in the kitchen window, the glow catching her cheekbones like glass. "Why are you always digging for ghosts?" she said, not looking at me. "He didn't want you. What more do you need?" I wanted to say, I need to know if he's alive. If he ever cared. If I come from someone who might have loved me. But I didn't say anything. The next morning, Darren caught me looking at him when he came out of the shower in a towel. I was just startled he didn't knock and I was brushing my teeth. Naomi slapped me so hard my ear rang. "Don't make him uncomfortable," she hissed. "Don't you dare." I stood there frozen, toothbrush in hand, blood in my mouth from where I'd bitten my cheek. She didn't look sorry. She looked furious, like I'd humiliated her in front of her prize. I didn't understand it then, the way she always seemed to protect them, not me. The way she chose men like shields and blamed me when they cracked. That night, I wrapped a towel under my door and practiced holding my breath in the closet. I was getting good at being small. At disappearing. At school, I became the quiet girl. The one who never joined group projects. The one who always smelled faintly of cigarettes and stale perfume. Teachers asked if everything was okay, but I just smiled. I got very good at lying. The only time I felt real was in the library. Miss Cambria, the librarian, let me stay after hours sometimes. I'd sit between the stacks, reading anything I could get my hands on: fiction, poetry, even science manuals. She once said, "You're always so focused. Do you want to be a writer?" I looked up, surprised. No one had asked what I wanted before. "I just want to be somewhere else," I said. She didn't press. She just slid a notebook toward me and said, "Start there." So I did. At night, when Naomi was passed out or busy entertaining Darren's friends, I wrote. Stories where girls escaped. Girls who weren't afraid. Girls who fought back. Sometimes I wrote letters to my father, whoever he was. "Dear Dad, today I got pushed down the stairs at school. Naomi said it was my fault for being clumsy. Dear Dad, Darren yelled at me for being in the kitchen when he got home. I was making ramen. Naomi said I was asking for it. Dear Dad, I'm tired. I never mailed them. I didn't even have an address. But writing them made me feel like someone was listening, even if it was just a fantasy. Then came the winter when everything snapped. It was January. I was 12. Darren lost his job and started staying home all day, chain-smoking and yelling at video games. Naomi was working nights at the bar. She told me not to make trouble while she was gone. One night, I got home from school to find Darren drunk and slumped on the couch. I tried to walk past quietly. He grabbed my wrist. "Make me a sandwich," he slurred. "I have homework," I said. He twisted my arm so hard I cried out. Naomi walked in at that exact moment. My heart surged she would see it. She would finally protect me. But she didn't. She pulled me away from him, shoved me into the wall and screamed, "I told you not to piss him off." Jesus, Anna. That night, I locked my bedroom and cried into my pillow until I gagged. When I woke up, my journal was gone. Naomi had found it. All of it. The letters. The stories. The entries about her. About Darren. About the bruises I sometimes sketched in the margins. She said nothing for 2 days. Then as I was brushing my hair before school, she walked in holding the notebook. "You think you're better than me?" I froze. "You think you're some tragic little poet, writing about how awful your life is? You're not special. You're not suffering. You're just ungrateful." She tore the notebook in half, right down the spine, and dropped it into the sink. "You want someone else to save you? Good luck. No one gives a damn, Anna. Not even your precious father." I stood there, hairbrush in hand, tears burning behind my eyes, and felt something I hadn't felt before, not fear. Not shame. Rage. It was quiet. Cold. Controlled. I picked up the pieces of that notebook after she left. Hid them under my mattress. And that night, I started a new one. But this time, I didn't write letters to a father I'd never met. This time, I started writing a plan. She said no one would ever believe me, so I found someone who did. I was 13 the first time I called a hotline. I'd memorized the number from a flyer posted outside the school nurse's office, a plain sheet of paper pinned crookedly to the corkboard, next to lost mittens and tutoring ads. It read, "Feeling unsafe at home? You're not alone." and below it, a toll-free number in thick black ink. I didn't call from our apartment, of course. Naomi had gotten paranoid ever since I'd been caught hiding a prepaid phone under my mattress, a gift from a girl at school who said, "You shouldn't be that scared all the time." Naomi smashed it with a hammer. Called it proof of betrayal. Told me if I ever tried to talk to someone outside again, they'd lock me away. "No one's gonna believe your dramatic little stories," she hissed. "You think they'll take you from me? I'm your mother. I make the rules. You're nothing without me." But I wasn't nothing. Not anymore. I still had my notebook. I still had Miss Cambria. She'd started slipping me books about survivors. Quietly, carefully. She never asked direct questions, maybe she couldn't, but she saw me. She knew. One afternoon, she leaned close and whispered, "If you ever need to call someone, use the library staff phone. No questions asked." So I waited until closing time. The building was empty. I sat in her office, heart pounding, and dialed with trembling fingers. A woman answered. Calm voice. "Steady. This is Elena with Sapphire. Are you in a safe place to talk?" I opened my mouth and for the first time in my life, I told a stranger the truth. About Naomi. About Darren. About the men who came and went and how I was told to just deal with it. About being sick and ignored. About bruises that didn't fade quickly enough. About the notebook, the broken phone, the silence. She didn't sound shocked. That hurt strangely. She just said, "I believe you. And we're going to figure this out together." She gave me a number to memorize, a name, social worker Lisa, and instructions. Don't confront your mom. Just stay alert. Keep documenting. When you're ready, we'll help you make a plan. I walked home that night feeling like something had shifted under my feet. Like the world wasn't as locked as Naomi made it seem. But I didn't feel safe yet. Darren was still there, still angry, still always half a beer away from losing control. Naomi had started locking the fridge, saying food was getting too expensive. I stole granola bars from school when I could. And one afternoon I came home to find my bedroom torn apart. Mattress flipped. Drawers open. My journals gone. She found them. The pages I'd written after the notebook she'd destroyed. The ones with dates, names, details. Proof. She waited for me in the kitchen. Alone. Darren wasn't home yet. The air smelled like bleach and rage. "You think you're clever?" she said, low and shaking. "You think writing this shit makes you powerful?" I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You want to go live with strangers? You want to end up in a group home, passed around like garbage?" I was taller than her now. Not by much, but enough. I didn't flinch when she raised her hand. She stopped. Maybe it was the look in my eyes. Maybe she saw that I wasn't scared the same way anymore. I'd tasted the idea of freedom and I wasn't letting it go. "You are nothing without me," she said again. But this time, I didn't believe her. I left the house the next morning with nothing but my school backpack and a change of clothes stuffed at the bottom. I didn't tell anyone goodbye. I walked into the library, calm and cold and ready. Miss Cambria saw me and didn't ask questions. She just nodded. We made the call. That afternoon, Lisa, the social worker, picked me up in an unmarked car. She let me ride in the front seat. She offered snacks. She told me my records would be sealed, that no one could find me unless I wanted them to. We didn't go to a group home. We went to a temporary foster house, a woman named Denise with 3 other girls, all older than me, all soft-eyed and hard-edged. At dinner, they told stories like war veterans. About moms who sold food stamps. Dads who never came home. Foster homes that were better. And worse. One girl, Maya, handed me a toothbrush still in its wrapper and said, "Welcome to the club." That night, I lay in a clean bed under a real quilt and cried so hard my throat hurt. Not because I was sad. Because I'd made it. I wasn't free yet. Not really. The system had rules. Naomi still had legal rights for now. There would be hearings. There would be visits. But the walls were cracking. And for the first time in 13 years, I could sleep without locking my door. She called me a liar in court, so I told them about the closet. It was cold in the courthouse, but not in a way a sweater could fix. I sat next to Lisa, my caseworker, gripping the edge of my seat while Naomi leaned back like she was bored at a dentist appointment. Her nails were fresh, pale pink with tiny gold stars, the kind she always got before a date or a legal battle. She wore her favorite perfume, too. The one that made my stomach turn. Across the aisle, Denise sat with a calm, sturdy posture. Maya had come too, technically not allowed, but as a friend, Lisa said. She didn't speak. just gave me a look that said, "You got this." Naomi didn't look at me once. Not when the judge entered. Not when the attorney spoke. Not when they read the report describing neglect, suspected physical abuse, and psychological harm. But when they gave me the chance to speak, she finally met my eyes. And she smirked. The judge, a tired man with glasses that kept sliding down his nose, asked if I wanted to say anything. Just for the record. I stood. Hands shaking. Voice low. But clear. I used to think the closet was the safest place in the world. Naomi's face didn't change. But I felt the ripple across the room. The judge tilted his head. When I was 9, I said I learned to fit myself inside the hallway closet behind the coats under the shoeboxes. I'd sit there with my knees up and a towel under the door so no one could see the light from my phone. I didn't look at her again. I looked at the judge. I wrote poems on the inside of my shoes. I timed my breathing to the hum of the refrigerator. I knew how long it took for her to fall asleep after wine. I knew the exact creak of every floorboard. The room was silent. I didn't tell anyone because she told me I'd end up in the system. That people would take me away, lock me up, or worse, send me back. Naomi's attorney cleared her throat, about to object. But I kept going. She called me a burden. Said I ruined every relationship she had. That I was the reason men left. That if I just acted right, smiled more, talked less, maybe someone would stay. Now Naomi looked uncomfortable. She told me my father never wanted me. That I was lucky she didn't leave me at the hospital. And I believed her. Until I didn't. I paused. Then, do you want to know what finally made me leave? The judge nodded. I turned to Naomi. You said no one would ever believe me. So I stopped trying to be believed. And started documenting everything. I handed Lisa the folder I'd kept hidden under my bed at Denise's. Photos of bruises. Screenshots of texts. Names, dates, times. Even an old audio recording of voicemail Naomi left screaming about how I better not run again, or she'd teach me a lesson I'd never forget. Lisa submitted it to the record. The smirk fell from Naomi's face like paint in the rain. When her attorney tried to challenge the timeline, the judge raised a hand. Ms. Watson, he said, her last name, not mine, you're welcome to respond. She stood. All perfume and posture. Your Honor, she said smoothly, my daughter has always had a vivid imagination. She's dramatic. Attention-seeking. Ever since she was a child. I've been a single mother since I was 19. I did my best. But she never appreciated what I gave up for her. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, glancing at the courtroom like she was expecting applause. She's telling stories to punish me, she added, voice trembling. She's just angry. Damn right I am, I said quietly. No one stopped me. I'm angry that I spent 13 years thinking love meant surviving. The judge leaned forward. And for the next 20 minutes I laid it all out. The food logs. The missed doctor visits. The slap in the hallway. The boyfriend who followed me into the bathroom. The broken phones. The destroyed journals. The fact that I still flinched when I heard heels on hardwood. At one point, I caught Naomi looking down, not ashamed. Just calculating. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't telling this story for her anymore. I was telling it for me. When I finished, the judge was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. You were failed, he said, voice low. By people who were supposed to protect you. But you are not broken. You're extraordinary. Naomi's parental rights were terminated that same week. No more visits. No more voicemails. No more fear. I wasn't property. I wasn't a burden. I was free. The first time someone asked what I liked, I didn't know how to answer. It was Denise, one quiet Sunday morning, pouring pancake batter into a warm skillet. She said it casually, like it wasn't a question that might crack my entire body open. So Anna, what do you like? Hobbies? Music? Anything you're into? I blinked. My fork paused midair. No one had ever asked me that before. Not in that way. Not what I needed. Not what was wrong. Not what had happened. Just what do you like? I opened my mouth then closed it. What did I like? I didn't know. I knew how to lie. I knew how to guess what other people liked and mirror it. I knew how to shrink myself in a room, how to become wallpaper. I knew how to be agreeable, silent, useful. But favorite songs? Books I chose for myself? Food that wasn't stolen, expired, or eaten with guilt. I had nothing. I don't know, I admitted. She didn't make it awkward. Just smiled gently and said, good. Then we get to find out. And that became a sort of ritual. Every Saturday I try something new. Denise called it reintroduction to self. The first week it was painting. I dipped a brush in bright blue and felt nothing. The second week, baking. I burned the cookies and cried in the bathroom, not because they were ruined but because I didn't know why I cared so much. The third week, music. Denise handed me an old iPod, loaded with everything from Nina Simone to Paramore. I lay in bed that night, earbuds in, listening to voices that sounded like mine. Not in tone but in ache. I started writing again. Not letters. Not secrets. Just small, strange things. A girl who turned into fog when people yelled at her. A bird who didn't sing but could hear ghosts. Maya found one of the stories on the kitchen counter and read it silently. Then she said, "You should write a book." I laughed. But something inside me warmed just a little. Therapy was twice a week. My therapist's name was Jordan. They wore mismatched earrings and always had herbal tea that smelled like safety. The first few sessions I barely spoke. Jordan didn't push. They just sat across from me and said, "Whenever you're ready." Eventually, the silence got loud enough to fill with truth. I told them about Naomi's silence. Her lashes. Her wine glass clinks. Her hunger for male attention and how she called that motherhood. I told them about Darren and Vince, and the boyfriend who used to call me prude for locking my door. I told them how I used to press my fingers into my ribs until they bruised, not to hurt myself, but to feel something that belonged to me. I wanted to mark my body before someone else did. I whispered. Jordan didn't flinch. Instead, they said, "That wasn't self-destruction. That was self-ownership." I didn't cry. Not then. But I walked out of that room breathing deeper. At school, I stopped apologizing for existing. I raised my hand in English. I corrected a boy in history class when he got a date wrong. I joined the yearbook team. I started sitting in the front row instead of the back. People noticed. Some backed away. Others leaned in. One afternoon, Miss Cambria visited the foster home. She'd brought a small package, a hardbound notebook with a ribbon tied around it. "I saved some of your old writings," she said. "From before. I thought you might want them back someday." I opened the book. Inside were my old poems. My lists. Even the sketch of the closet door, the one I used to stare at for hours. I cried then. Not because it hurt, but because I could finally look at those pages and say, that girl made it out. She survived. She became me. She told me my father abandoned me, but he had been writing to me for years. It started with a letter in a manila envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in pen, careful and deliberate. Lisa handed it to me after school, her brow furrowed. "This came through the agency. We had it screened, no red flags. You don't have to open it if you don't want to." I opened it anyway. Inside, a single folded page. Thick paper, slightly creased at the edges, like it had been carried around too long before being mailed. The handwriting was clean. Familiar somehow. "Dear Anna, I don't know if you'll want to hear from me. I don't blame you if you don't. But I've written you every year since you were born. Birthdays. Christmas. Just to say I loved you. That I always have." Your mother never replied. I tried lawyers. Mediation. Mediation again. I tried waiting. I tried believing she'd come around. I tried trusting that when you were old enough, maybe you'd want to find me. If you're reading this, maybe you are. My name is Andrew. I'm your father. My knees went numb. I sat on the floor of Denise's hallway and read the letter 3 times before I could breathe properly. I thought about all the times Naomi rolled her eyes and said, "He didn't want you." All the times she shrugged and said, "If he cared, he'd be here." All the times I asked for a name and got silence in return. She hadn't just erased him, she'd weaponized his absence. And now his voice was in my hands. Lisa helped me follow the process, verifying identity, legal safeguards, agency contacts. It wasn't fast. Nothing with the system ever was. But 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a quiet office with a window that overlooked a city I didn't recognize, waiting for a man I couldn't remember. The door opened. And there he was. Gray at the temples. Tired around the eyes. But when he looked at me, something in my chest unspooled. "Hi," he said softly. I couldn't speak. He sat across from me, holding nothing but a small stack of envelopes. Thick, yellowed, rubber banded together. "I tried to give you these once," he said. She mailed them back. Unopened. I reached for them. Each one was dated. The earliest was for my first birthday, a tiny handprint drawn in pen with a note. I wish I could hold your hand today. The next year, a poem. Year 3, a picture book he wrote himself. When I opened the 5th envelope, age 6, I found a photo. Him, standing in front of a courthouse, holding a sign, I'm still trying. I couldn't hold back the tears. She told me you didn't care, I whispered. He shook his head slowly. Anna. I cared so much it nearly broke me. We talked for hours. He told me about the custody fight. The court-ordered mediation Naomi never showed up for. The restraining order she filed when he tried to send birthday gifts. The phone calls blocked. The address changes. The schools he called only to be told she's not enrolled here anymore. She made it look like I abandoned you, he said. But she was the one who erased me. I told him about the closet. The boyfriends. The bruises. I told him about the journal Naomi destroyed, the pantry she locked, the slap that taught me to stop asking questions. His hands trembled. I should have tried harder, he said, voice cracking. I looked at him, really looked, and said the thing I didn't know I needed to say. You never stopped trying. That night, back at the foster home, I sat with the letter spread across my bed like a timeline of a life I never got to live. And for the first time, the silence of my childhood didn't feel like proof that I was unloved. It felt like evidence of how hard someone tried to reach me through the noise. She told everyone I was ungrateful, so I brought the letters to her door. I didn't plan to see her again. Not because I was afraid, not anymore, but because I thought silence would be louder than any revenge. But then she started talking. On Facebook, a friend of a friend sent me screenshots. Posts like, my daughter was taken from me by liars and social workers who don't know real sacrifice. Comments like, she was always troubled. Pictures of her and Darren smiling with their new dog, the caption reading, finally at peace. Toxic people removed equals healing begins. That last one burned. Because I knew what she meant by toxic. She meant me. Lisa said I didn't have to respond. That I could block, report, move on. But something in me refused. Not for attention. Not for justice. For truth. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your story is to say it out loud, where the silence used to be. So I printed every letter my father had written. I made copies of the envelopes Naomi had returned unopened. I included the court documents, the ones she told everyone didn't exist. I printed the voicemail she'd left me once, the one where she screamed, don't think he wants you now either. And I walked to her apartment. Same building. Same chip stairs. Same porch light that always flickered like a dying signal. She opened the door after the second knock. She looked older. Or maybe just smaller. Her lipstick was faded. Her smile was plastic. Well, she said coolly. Look what the system dragged in. I handed her the folder. What's this? She asked. Proof. She laughed, high and fake. Of what? That he tried. That you lied. That I wasn't abandoned, I was hidden. Her jaw clenched. You don't know what it was like. Raising you alone. Working double shifts. No help, no money. You had help, I cut in. You had a man sending birthday letters to a daughter he wasn't allowed to see. You had court options. Mediation. Family. But you chose silence. You chose control. She stepped back. I didn't. You told everyone I was ungrateful. But I was a child begging for scraps of affection you gave to strangers in my bed. Watch your tone, she snapped. I tilted my head. I used to watch everything, remember? My voice wasn't the problem. Yours was. She looked down at the folder, hands trembling. You were difficult, she murmured. Always reading, always judging, like you thought you were better than me. I didn't think I was better, I said. I just thought I deserved to be safe. For a second, just a second, something flickered in her eyes, not guilt. Not remorse. But maybe the beginning of recognition. I turned to leave. Anna, she called after me. I paused on the steps. I gave up everything for you, she said, voice thin and bitter. I turned halfway. Looked her dead in the eyes. No, I said softly. You gave up on me. That's not the same. Then I walked away. Not with anger, not with tears. With clarity. She could spin her stories, curate her lies, rewrite the past all she wanted. But now I had the truth. And I wasn't hiding it anymore. I used to write letters to a father I thought didn't exist. Now I'm writing scholarship essays in his living room. It smells like cedar and coffee beans here. The floors creak, but not in a threatening way. More like the house is clearing its throat before saying something kind. My father's home isn't fancy. It's not big, but it's clean, warm, and full of light. And books. So many books. Dog-eared novels, poetry collections, even a few of my childhood favorites, the ones Naomi used to call a waste of time. He kept them on purpose. I read every title you ever mentioned in your letters, he told me once. Even the silly ones. I'm sitting in his living room now, laptop open, staring at a blinking cursor. The essay prompt reads, "Tell us about a moment that changed your life." I've started it 23 times. Typed, deleted. Typed again. Because there's no single moment, not really. There's just a slow series of cracks, and one day you realize the light's been trying to get in the whole time. But I settle on this. The moment I stopped apologizing for surviving. I write about the closet, the library, the notebook Naomi tore in half, and how I kept writing anyway. I write about foster care, the first time someone asked what I liked, the day I saw my father's handwriting for the first time and knew, absolutely knew, that love had never truly left me. It had just been intercepted. I write about trauma, yes, but I write about rebuilding too, because no one tells you that healing isn't loud. It's not a dramatic montage. It's not a courtroom victory or a dramatic hug with soft music playing. Sometimes it's just making your own doctor's appointment. Sometimes it's walking into a store and buying toothpaste with your own money and realizing no one is watching, no one is judging, no one is threatening to take it back. Sometimes it's calling Maya just to say, "I miss you." Sometimes it's sitting across from your father at breakfast and hearing him say, "You always liked your eggs scrambled." I remember. I finished the essay. I hit submit. Later that week, I read it aloud at a youth outreach event Lisa invited me to. Small crowd. Folding chairs. Warm smiles. Afterward, a girl no older than 12 came up and whispered, "That part about the closet. That's where I go too." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I just handed her a blank notebook and said, "Write everything. Even the stuff that hurts. Especially the stuff that hurts." And for the first time, I didn't feel like someone who'd lost everything. I felt like someone who had survived enough to offer directions to someone else still finding their way out. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I know it means remembering without breaking. My name is Anna. I'm 18. And last week, I stood on a stage in front of 400 people and told the truth. Not all of it. Not the parts that still catch in my throat when I try to say them out loud, but enough. Enough to shake something loose in the air. It was a youth advocacy conference. My scholarship required me to present a personal narrative tied to resilience. Resilience. The word tastes like ashen iron. When I stepped to the mic, the room blurred for a moment. I saw flashes of Naomi's kitchen, the bruises I used to name like planets, the smell of bleach and cheap wine, Darren's boots on my bed. But then I saw something else. Miss Cambria's smile. Maya's half-laugh, half-scoff. Denise's calm hands. My father sitting in the front row, notebook in his lap like I was the only thing in the world worth documenting. So I spoke. I didn't read from a script. I didn't memorize. I told the story of a girl who hid in closets and wrote invisible poems on her shoelaces. A girl who was called dramatic, needy, broken. A girl who thought love was something you had to earn by being quiet enough not to get hit. I didn't say Naomi's name. I didn't have to. The room heard it anyway. Afterward, people came up in twos and threes, all saying some version of, "Thank you." Me too. I thought I was the only one. I wasn't. None of us were. That night, I stayed up late in my dorm staring at the ceiling. I don't sleep with headphones anymore. I don't flinch when people raise their voices nearby. I don't jump when someone knocks on the door. But I still keep a flashlight by my bed. Just in case. Because healing isn't a line, it's a spiral. Some days I forget I was ever that girl. Other days I feel her in my chest like a second heartbeat. But she's not a ghost anymore. She's a witness. A survivor. And she doesn't want revenge. She wants to write. So I do. I'm studying psychology now with a minor in creative writing. I spend my weekends tutoring younger girls in the system. I keep a stack of blank notebooks in my closet, not because I'm hiding, but because I'm preparing. Because someday a girl like me will say, "I don't know how to tell my story." And I'll hand her one and say, "Start here." She sent me a letter for my graduation, and I didn't open it. It arrived in early May, 2 weeks before the ceremony. A cream envelope with my full name, written in the same looping, performative script Naomi used for birthday cards she forgot to give me on time. No return address. No apology. Just my name. Lisa warned me it might happen. Big milestones tend to stir the pot, she said gently. You're graduating. That's power she can't take credit for. I held the letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the handwriting of the woman who once told me, "You'll never make it without me." And now here I was. Accepted into 3 universities. A published essay. A speaker's slot at commencement. A therapist who said the word stable and meant it. A part-time job I loved. A dorm room full of plants and noise and air that didn't choke me. A father who saved every grocery receipt because he still couldn't believe someone depended on him again. I didn't open the envelope. Because I already knew what it said. Something dramatic, self-pitying. Probably a backhanded compliment about how she always knew I'd do something big, even with all the drama I caused. Maybe a half apology laced with manipulation. Maybe just silence folded in paper, hoping I'd fill in the blanks with forgiveness. But I didn't owe her that. Forgiveness isn't a door I leave open in case someone decides they're ready to walk through it. It's a lock I changed to protect the peace I built from rubble. So I didn't open it. I burned it. Behind the dorm building in a small legal fire it we use for mores and breakup letters. I fed the envelope to the flame and watched it curl and blacken. No ceremony. No fury. Just release. And that night, I wrote myself a new letter. No, dear Anna. No, love, Dad. Just a message to the girl who used to believe she was unlovable. You survived. You chose truth. You built something beautiful from everything she tried to bury. And none of it, not 1 inch of this life, belongs to her. The next morning I folded that letter and slipped it into the pocket of the dress I wore beneath my graduation gown. And when I crossed the stage, head high, heart calm, I felt her, the girl I used to be. Not mourning. Not afraid. Just free.